So I'm recording my homily for the third Sunday of Advent, and I came up to visit my mom in Squim. Right behind, or I should say right behind the camera, is the Sandspit. The Sandspit is the Dungeness Wildlife Refuge here, and the Sandspit extends, whoa, water's coming up a little higher than I thought. Sandspit extends out about 7 miles. I think it's about 7 miles out into the water. As you can see, it's a beautiful location. And I wanted to get down here before it started to rain. But the tide is coming up a little bit, oh my gosh, a little bit faster than I thought. Uh-oh. Well, anyways, okay. So, the thing I focused on this Sunday was the very nature of prophecy. And so we see at the birth of Jesus, as well as we see at his last days here on earth, you're going to see all these prophecies talked about in the scriptures. And the prophecies, really what they are is they are road signs. They're signs that point to Jesus Christ. And I want to show how, just in a few ways, how people, whether prophets or just ordinary people or saints, how they chose to point to Jesus Christ. And so you think of road signs, you think of signs, they point us to a destination. And the sign is not meant to draw attention to itself, but rather to something else. Now, in our culture, it's very common. In our culture, it's very common for, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Gosh. I should probably just stand up here. Anyways. Whoa. It's very common for somebody who's very famous to point to themselves, and we point to them. So for example, let's say you have a sports athlete who's really good at what they do, and so because they're really good at what they do, they begin to inherit a certain level of credibility in our culture, and so they start doing things like selling products, right? And it doesn't matter that they have no idea of the quality or even of what the product really does, but because of their status as this sports athlete, they can sell you a microwave oven, right? They can sell you a car, they can sell you anything. And so it's intrinsic in our culture that we look to people who are very famous and we kind of trust them. And so during an election year, you have actors and actresses and you have sports stars coming out and saying, you should really vote for this person, and they don't really have any more insight into politics than you and I do, but because we look up to them, we trust them, right? It's also ordinary for someone who's like a sports athlete or an actor, actress, that they're rich. Because of their fame, they're wealthy, they live in giant mansions. This is very common. So with Jesus Christ, it's the exact opposite. What happens with Jesus is that when somebody is closer and closer to God, and they have a bigger and bigger role to play in salvation, their life actually does the exact opposite of what we do in our culture. Whereas with actors and actresses, we put them up on pedestals and we, in a sense, worship them, right? So, I should have picked a different place. Anyways, so we worship but with Jesus Christ, the prophets, they are the people who more and more their lives become obscured by the fact that they just simply want to put Jesus up there. They just want to point to Jesus. And so you'll see their life become, if you will, smaller and smaller, and Jesus becomes bigger and bigger. And so you look at Mother Teresa. Why do we admire her so much? Because we saw Jesus Christ, right? And so let's go into some of the stories today. Well, actually, before I get to that, St. Francis of Assisi, one of my favorite saints, he's one of these people who the closer he got to fulfilling God's will in his life, you could say he became famous, but it wasn't really fame. It was what the attraction was people saw Jesus Christ. And so he didn't get richer, he got poorer. Because he gave more to be free. He gave more to simply, everything in his life was just to point to Jesus Christ. And I'm talking really fast because I'm really nervous here. I thought the tide was going out, but I think it's coming in. Anyway, so where was I? Yes. Okay, anyways, I'm abbreviating my homily today. You're going to get a short homily today. Mary and Joseph today, all right, start over. As Mary and Joseph get closer to becoming, if you will, the center focus of salvation history, of becoming, for Mary becoming the mother of Jesus Christ, and for Joseph becoming his foster father, their lives are not going to become filled with fame and fortune. In fact, you see God doing the exact opposite. So today in the readings, that's where I was going. Today in the readings, John the Baptist, you see the same thing happening. He says, look, I am not even worthy to unfasten his sandal straps. And so the more he points to Jesus Christ, the lower and more obscure his life becomes. And he didn't live a life of fame and fortune. So, like when you see these televangelists who say they represent Jesus Christ and they live in a $10 million mansion, you know something's intrinsically wrong by that example. I'm not saying something's necessarily wrong with things they're saying, but by their example, there's something just not in conformity with Jesus Christ. That's the way the world does it. That's not how God does it. John the Baptist is how God does it. He has him living like a homeless man, but it's because he's so free to just be a sign that points to God, that points to Jesus. Okay, Mary and Joseph, as they begin this adventure, if you will, they started by finding out that they have to go to Bethlehem. Well, they don't live in Bethlehem. In fact, they live in Nazareth, which is about 90 miles away. Okay, 90 miles by car, that's no big deal. They didn't have cars. So Mary, who's 9 months pregnant, has to walk or journey, or at least sit on a donkey, 90 miles. Well, I figure that would have taken them probably about 9 days. That's a significant number symbolically for us as Catholics, because when we do a novena, that's 9 days. And so it's like a journey that we enter in with them. Now, in the different cultures, in preparing for Christmas, we often have 9 days novenas. In the Filipino culture, they celebrate Simbangabi for 9 days. In the Hispanic culture, they have posadas, which is reenacting Mary and Joseph. I think this is significant that there's this 9-day journey before Christmas. Now, 9 days before this Christmas was Saturday. I had a wedding that Saturday. And it was a very beautiful wedding. And I was before the wedding, I was trying to come up with a homily, and I was just drawing a blank. I'm kind of homilied out. I've been giving so many homilies lately. Well, I'm in the sacristy, and my sacristan is there, and he says, "So, Father, are you all ready?" And I said, "I'm all ready, except I don't have a homily." And I told him, I said, I have something, I'm thinking about something with Mary and Joseph, because today would be 9 days before Christmas, which means today they're beginning their journey from Nazareth to Bethlehem. And he said, "But that's all I got. I don't have anything." And so he said, now he's a young dad, he's got a couple kids, great father. He said, "Father, why don't you talk about Joseph and just how attentive he would have had to have been with Mary? Just think of the circumstances, how absolutely focused he would have been as a new husband to his wife in these circumstances, and how everything in the entire world, everything came down to him simply caring for his wife, who was carrying the Son of God. And I thought that was just so beautiful. As a father and as a husband, he would have really appreciated that if he put himself in Joseph's circumstances. I want to talk just for a little bit about that. How did it all come to be that Joseph and Mary decided to go to Bethlehem? Well, we would say, well, there's the prophecy, right? There's the prophecy that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem, that the Messiah would be born from Bethlehem. And we understand the connections with King David, who was a very poor shepherd boy who came from Bethlehem. And so you have those connections. The thing is, God doesn't come and appear to Joseph and say, hey, you need to take Mary to Bethlehem to fulfill this prophecy. Now remember, the prophecy is something that points the whole world to the Messiah or to something that God is doing. But God doesn't do that. How does he do it? He does it through the Roman emperor, right? The Roman emperor comes to this decision and says, we need to have a census. We need to count the people. And so in counting the people, the Roman emperor has no idea that what he's doing, what he thinks he's doing for his kingdom, he's actually doing for God. He's fulfilling God's will. And so he comes to the decision to take a census. And so the Jewish authorities, who were the leaders in that area and were kind of puppets to the Roman emperor, decide that they're going to do it by having everybody return to their native tribal origins, right? And so for Joseph, that was Bethlehem. He's from that tribe. Now, the Jewish authorities have no idea that they're helping to bring about this prophecy. They think they're just serving the Roman emperor, who in a sense, by doing that, they're actually in some ways betraying the one whom they serve, who is God. They have no idea that they're helping to point the way to the Messiah, but that's exactly what they're doing. Whoa. So you gotta love it. You gotta love it, because that's how God works. So even when we're cooperating with God, he does great and magnificent things. When we are not cooperating with God, he still does great and magnificent things. I mean, it's phenomenal how God does that. So, Jewish authorities decide everybody's got to go. So here, God takes thousands of people, he uproots them for this couple weeks, he makes them all move and go back to their origins, all so that he could simply lay the foundation to fulfill one prophecy. That Jesus, the Son of God, would be from Bethlehem. And so he does that. And it's magnificent. Does he give Mary and Joseph a mansion waiting for them in Bethlehem? Does he have them, is the road paved with or rolled out with a red carpet? None of that. In fact, the more they come to fulfill God's will, in a sense, the poorer they become. And we will see that next week when they finally arrive in Bethlehem and Joseph is put to the absolute test as a father, and Mary as a soon-to-be first-time mother who's giving birth to the Son of God. And they probably felt like maybe they were doing something wrong, maybe they had screwed up, because nothing seemed to be going in their favor. And yet everything was being laid out exactly the way God wanted it. Not to elevate, not to put them up on the pedestal, but anything to bring them down lower and lower. Boy, I'm right at the water's edge here. So, it's just so beautiful how God does that. Now, I want us to take this back into our own life and realize that God, Jesus Christ, every single day, he's got little prophecies, little things that he's doing, little plans that he lays out to be able to help us to unite ourselves to what Jesus Christ is trying to do. Come on, stay back. All right. And so whether a person is, St. Francis of Assisi, and he's going to Rome in order to petition the Pope to approve his order, or whether it's St. John the Baptist out in the desert pointing the way to Jesus, or it's Mary and Joseph along the way, or it's you and me. You and me seeking and desiring to manifest Jesus Christ in our own lives. The closer we get to God, the more we become obscure. People don't see us, but they see Jesus Christ. And so then we simply point them along the way. We show them the way. And I think that's just what's so beautiful. So for these 9 days, we have the opportunity to journey with them and to learn what it was like to be Joseph and Mary, to be humbled more and more, so that we can elevate our neighbors and other loved ones so that they can see Jesus Christ. All right, I'm about to have a heart attack here. I know I'm going to get wet, so I'm going to call it good for this week. I hope you have a wonderful final couple days before Christmas, and I will be recording a homily for next week. I will see you then. God bless. Happy Advent.